Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 642. I had the white pieces kicked off with d4. My opponent went knight f6, perfectly normal move. I go c4, and then he goes d6, which is a bit of a rare move. This can introduce some different systems. Let's see, e6 is a way to get into the the Nimzo Indian or maybe the Queen's Indian, or just to prepare to go back into a Queen's Gambit. G6 is second choice, sets up a King's Indian, or sometimes a Grinfeld, and then c5 is a way to play to get into the Benoni or the Binko Gambit. So d6 is the fourth choice on this list. This can set up a Pirt's defense or a King's Indian defense, and in this case I think it was just a move order to get into the King's Indian. I just do some natural development. And then here I decided to go with the G3 setup against the King's Indian. I've been playing that a lot. That's the way they used to play back at the time of the Zurich Candidates Tournament. And since I looked at a lot of those games, I said, it looks like an interesting system, and maybe people aren't so used to it these days. The classical lines against the King's Indian are considered better, so they don't play this so much. But better for white. So white generally chooses to play the classical lines to try and get more of an advantage. But those are very sharp lines, and black has a lot of counterattacking chances, whereas this seems more solid for white and still keeping an edge. So I kind of like it. Anyway, from this position, knight to c6 is apparently the main move. I guess that would support the idea of pushing the pawn to e5, and maybe the knight would route around this way. Or the knight could go directly to d7. That's the second most popular move here, and that also supports the idea of e5. So b6 is really an offbeat move, and we're just out of the opening book at this point. And I played knight g5, which seems like a natural way to try and take advantage of this discovered attack along the diagonal. And it's not a bad move, but I just looked at it with the chess engine to see if there was anything else that could be played there. If there's any great gain from playing that move, and it doesn't appear that it leads to a lot. And chess engine just wants to play normal moves. So, for example, castles, bishop b7. So bishop is also loose on that diagonal, so there's still tempo moves with the knight, but just continuing to develop queen c2, knight bd7, and bishop to g5, getting all the pieces developed. That's how the chess engine wants to play it, and I think that's a very sensible way to play. So, but anyway, I was tempted to see what damage could be inflicted by exposing this, and he has to block the diagonal, so I thought maybe this pawn structure isn't what he was looking for. But my knight is going to get kicked back, so both sides have kind of wasted a tempo or two, and so it doesn't lead to a whole lot for white, although there's still some slight opening edge. So let's continue. I castle. He plays bishop b7. I go h3 here. I want to keep his knight out of this square, and maybe play king h2 at some point. He goes knight bd7. I go bishop to e3. That was the point of h3, is so to allow me to develop this bishop here without being harassed. And then he goes rook to b8, defending his bishop, so he can push this pawn forward without a problem. Let's see, I went queen d2, but the queen on d2 isn't especially well positioned, and actually there's some ways that black can take advantage of it. I'll show that in a move. But queen d3 is actually a better spot for the queen here. But let's take a look at queen d2, and we'll see what happens. First of all, black could play b5 immediately here. And, I was thinking I would play something like this, b3. He would take, I would take, and then the problem is that he's got knight b6 now. And you'll see my queen on d2. It's not defending that pawn. This pawn is loose, and I'll have to waste some more time defending it. So actually black gets a pretty good position here. He gets some easy development, and these pawns come under fire, these two pawns. So so queen d2 can lead to some trouble. But he didn't play that. He played d5, so that's cancel that. He played d5. So that saves me some problems, but it does set up another idea here, which is knight coming to e4 with tempo. Another problem with this queen d2 is that it's always a target of knight e4 here. Anyway, I decided to take. This is all okay though. I mean, it's still in the range of about even. It's just that I had some kind of an opening advantage, and after queen d2, it kind of disappeared, and we have basically an even game. Anyway, I put my rook on the open file. He played h6, kicking my knight back, and my knight drops back. And now he plays the funny move knight to e8, just giving up on his h-pawn. The chess engine thinks that black is fine here and just wants to play knight to e4. Like I said, kicking the queen. Queen probably goes to d3 now. And this is, I don't want to take this knight because that's supported, the pawn is supported by the bishop, and that'll be a strong and annoying pawn there on e4. So anyway, black gets to post this knight here, and that gives him plenty of play. So an equal game. Instead, he went knight e8. And now I'm just a pawn up. So I grab the pawn, which is correct, and there's not much he can do about it. So he just starts a little play on the queen side with a6, keeping my knight from hopping into b5. I do the exchange. He took back with the knight. And now I just played knight h2. I'm trying to reorganize my pieces a little bit, but it seems to be a bit of a slow plan. The chess engine thinks that after g4, that white has a really big advantage, although there doesn't seem to be any big tactic here. It's just maybe the space. With g4, I control these squares for his knight on g2 to develop to, and maybe I can start harassing some of his pawns, like the loose pawn here. It's not loose yet, but he does have some weaknesses that I can start probing at. Interesting, but it seems like the chess engine thinks white is just winning here. I don't quite see it, honestly, but that was the engine's point of view. Anyway, so not finding that idea, I start maneuvering with my knights. Knight h2, he goes knight f6, and then I bring this knight around. I was thinking bring this over to the king side and maybe take advantage of the slight weakening to the king side that's happened because of the loss of the h-pawn. But now he hops in with knight e4, and that's a good move. The queen goes to d3. He goes e6, showing up his center here, and I go knight e3. So at this point, I'm still up a pawn. So I haven't given up my advantage, but black is consolidated, and he's not in any danger of being overrun. So there's still a long game ahead. Queen to f6, and lots of things can go on. That's my point. So even though I may have a pawn advantage, it's a long way between here and the endgame where I can actually cash it in. Let's see, I go knight e to g4, kicking his queen. The queen came over to g5. And knight f3, kicking the queen again. I think he gave me a few free tempos here that probably didn't help his cause. But it doesn't seem to have caused too many problems either. Anyway, queen e3, I'm trying to maneuver my queen in to where I can do something effective. And now knight to f5, harassing my queen again. But at least this time I had an answer, and then the chess engine likes this as well. Knight to h6 check. It's a kind of fork. It's not really winning in a material. It's not that kind of fork, but it is allowing me to keep my queen on an active square, not just keep getting kicked around. So an important resource. He went king h7 here, and I traded off that knight rather than move the king, and he took with the e-pawn. So now I'm a pawn up. I'm still a pawn up, and now I have a weak pawn here that I can play against. But he has a very strong knight. It'll take a little maneuvering to get rid of it. Let's see, but I have a good square for my knight too. I hop in with knight e5, and then he kicks it with f6. So there's a tactic here, and I missed this during the game, but it's kind of a nice one. So if you want to pause the video here, if you want to think about it, pause the video here and see if you can spot the tactic. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. The tactic is relying on the fact that his queen is unprotected. So he's got a loose queen there. And after I take this pawn on g6, apparently sacrificing that knight for nothing, I've got a pin on this knight, and it's my turn to move. And I can just play f6 there and win that knight back. And well, that's good for white. So an interesting little tactic. It doesn't actually win material, but it takes some of the material off, brings us closer to the end game, and exposes. Maybe it does win a pawn. I was thinking he got this pawn back here. Yeah, he gets the pawn back there. So it doesn't actually win material, but it does destroy some of the pawn cover around the king. And like I said, reduce the material. Overall, bring us closer to the end game where I'm winning. Anyway, I didn't spot that idea. But I had an escape plan for my knight, which was to play over here to c6. So that's a fork hitting the queen and the rook, so he has to trade it off. And then I get an active rook, so this is good for me as well. So I've played the game pretty well up to this point. But after rook f to e8, played here, my next move, king h2, is a mistake. I have some active possibilities here, and I should really just continue with that. And the best move here is rook to c1. Just bring this rook over to the c file, threaten to bring a rook down, and skewer the queen and the king. And so this king h2 move is just a little bit slow. Here, let's show this line a little bit. He can defend that square with rook to b7, and then I can play queen to f4, which I hit on this idea later in the game, and I've got like 3 pieces piling up on that square. Rook to d8, so he can interpose, and then g4, trying to break up some of the pawns around the king. And now I've got his pieces tied down defending against the invasion on c7, and I'm starting to pile up here on the f pawn as well. I'm threatening just to take the knight and then grab the pawn there. So yeah, he can't really defend against all these threats. So right here was a good point to there's no need to play the prophylactic move king to h2. I was worried about some exchanges leaving my back rank exposed, but if you actually work through the variation, you'll see that that's not happening. So king to h2 is a unnecessary prophylactic move and kind of a waste of time. And then he goes queen to d7, wanting to chase my rook away, and I defended with queen to c1. And that's a second mistake. Actually, the chess engine thinks I'm better off just retreating the rook at this point, and then after rook b to c8, doubling my rooks this way. And the thing is, this way of playing, I keep some influence over the c file, whereas the way I played it, when the queen went here to c1 to defend the rook, it's a little bit too slow. He can, you know, if I could triple here, if I could lift my queen up and bring a rook over behind it or put a rook in front of it, then I would be okay. But here he can challenge. Let's see, he played rook e to c8. He can challenge the c file and actually chase me off of it. I don't have any way to hold on to the c file. So rook takes, and then I went queen to d1. So after this exchange, black is actually almost caught up. So I mean, I still have the extra pawn, but now he got the more active pieces, so he has the compensation, and maybe he can hold this position with good play. Anyway, he starts off okay, plays queen b5. I decided to get rid of the knight at this point. It was interfering with a lot of my plans, places where I wanted to put the queen. Let's see, he took with the f pawn, and that did straighten out his pawns, but I am still a pawn up here. Let's see, I went with queen d2, defending my second rank there. This pawn was under attack. And he goes queen to a4 here. Oh yeah, he went this way. Didn't want to trade queens, but he's looking at, you know, my loose pawns. Though this one is defended, but this a pawn is loose. So I played b3, which defends the pawn and kicks the queen. And then he went queen back to d7. And after queen d7, the advantage shifts, and I have a big advantage. The chess engine thinks that he could play on with something like this, just offering the queen trade, and white probably avoids it to try and play on, and then play g5 to block this diagonal, so it's not so easy for me to get to his king. He's still got control of the c file, and you know, if he can stay with his pieces active and keeping pressure on my position, you know, maybe he can hold this. He went back with the queen to d7, and so I put my rook on the c file. And then a second mistake was retreating his rook to h8, although he's still in a little bit of trouble here. Let's see, the engine recommends the best move is g5, blocking this diagonal. Then after the exchange, I can play queen to b4 and start to penetrate into his position. You know, I'm threatening to come in on this diagonal and deliver some checks to the king if it's not defended. And then I'm also threatening to just take his b pawn. So I have the more active queen here, and I have the pawn. So you know, good chances for white, probably winning with best play, but still black is in the game, and if he can activate his queen, Yeah, there's lots of drawing chances with queens on the board, especially if you trade off some pawns and expose my king. So it would not be game over, but the way he played it with rook to h8, I actually have a winning advantage here, and I found the right move for once, queen to f4, which is the idea we saw earlier. It's just the coordination of the queen and the rook along the second rank there, and he's in big trouble. And he just played king g7 here, allowing that skewer, or fork, or pin rather. Let's see, the chess engine wants to play rook to c8 to try and prevent that, and then after the trade I can grab a pawn, and so I'm now 2 pawns up and have an active queen, so I'm still winning, but not as fast as I am after king g7. So after king g7 I didn't let the win slip away this time, although there is a funny moment here coming up. Let's see, he took, there's nothing better, and then, well, let's just play on a few moves because there's not a whole lot going on. The queen is a lot more powerful than the rook, and I can just gobble up the pawns and check his king. So the only thing that black can hope for here is trying to set up some kind of fortress, but there's too many pawns on the board for that to be an effective strategy, because even if he manages to set up a fortress, I can just start winning with my extra pawns, pushing them forward. So that doesn't work. So there's no way for black to save it. Now, this is the funny moment. I moved my queen here, and I was just moving there to get out of the way of this pawn, which I was going to bring in to score, and he ignored that and pushed his own pawn forward. But there was a second threat with this move. The queen was actually threatening the rook in the corner, and we both ignored that for about 2 moves. So kind of funny. Anywhere along there I could have taken his rook, and then finally here he moves his rook away by giving it up. I guess he was trying to give it away in the corner and I wouldn't take it. So he finally forces me to take it, and he plays on a few moves, maybe hoping for some stalemate trick, but he decided to stop playing at this point and resigned. Anyway, cute game. Hope you guys like this. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.